You're listening to Footy Talk, your place for the latest news, interviews and analysis from the world of AFL. It is a Tuesday, August 6th. Not long to go till the end of the home and away season, but I'm joined by my great mate Nick Riewoldt, looking sharp as always. Good morning, Rui. Massive weekend of footy over here. There were games galore. 4 teams came from behind at three-quarter time to win. McGovern had a shot after the siren. We had 3 games that were decided in probably the first 15 minutes where you knew a team couldn't win. And then we had North Melbourne v Richmond playing off with a wooden spoon. So a fascinating weekend of footy. I'm sure you enjoyed it as well. But where do you want to take your thought of the week to kick us off this Tuesday?
Yeah, well, my thought of the week, we often speculate about which team, and particularly when you get to this stage of the season, which team is under the most pressure, which coach is under the most pressure, and rarely do we focus on individuals being under that individual sort of performance pressure. But I couldn't help but be jolted by the amount of commentary that there was around Charlie Curnow in the aftermath of the Carlton-Collingwood game, and the fact that he didn't kick a goal only the second time this year. He hasn't kicked multiple goals, and I'll stop short of calling it a pile-on, but I can't remember a player being under more pressure at this stage of the season and leading into potential finals than the temperature around Charlie Curnow at the moment. And it took one game, Joey. That is what's staggering. It took one game for the commentary around Charlie Curnow to go from 0 to 10 out of 10. And it's not like he's been in a bad run of form. I mean, he's kicked 3-4-3 the last 3 weeks. One of them he had 10 shots at goal. So his form's been really strong. He could win his 3rd Coleman in a row. He's going to kick 60 goals again this season, which is, 60 is the new 80, the way that the game is played. So he's had a really good year, yet the temperature on Charlie gets turned up so quickly, and he almost becomes a bit of the poster boy for Carlton's woes. And it made me think about the amount of focus that we have on teams at this stage of the year, and how it can be funneled so directly onto one player. I don't envy his position at the moment, because really for Charlie, based on the final series he put in last year, if they don't play finals, he doesn't get an opportunity to, redeem himself in the eyes of the football public. And if they do play finals, and that's the noise that comes out of a quiet game for him, can you imagine the pressure that he's going to be under going into September? So I feel for him. I feel like I lived through something pretty similar, but I did think that the commentary around him this week, while fair in relation to the context around the way he positions and plays within the game, I think a lot of it was fair. The way the temperature got turned up on him, gee, it happened fast.
I tell you what, Roo, that's a great shout, because I didn't know where you were going to go coming in today, but I had the exact same notes that I wanted to bring up in Real Talk, Shit Talk about Charlie Curnow, because I had the exact same. I thought, look, he hasn't set the world, it hasn't been as good a year as his previous couple, and he probably hasn't had those massive games where we've sort of gone, wow, he's kicked 6 or 7 and been dominant, but he's actually been very consistent. So you're right, 3 goals, 7, 4 goals, 2, 3 goals, 1 coming into the game. And yes, he got beaten. So he got beaten by Darcy Moore. That could happen to any forward, even the all-time great forwards, Wayne Carey, and everyone has had quiet games where they've been beaten by their opponent. So then I delved a bit deeper and thought, this whole thing about him got to get to more contests, he's got to work harder. So I went and dug Rui. He's been in 30 more one-on-one contests than any other key forward in the game this year. He's been targeted the second most of any forward in the competition inside 50. He's taken the second most contested marks in the forward half of the ground. He's clearly had the most shots at goal. So the only reason he's trailing in the Coleman is Jesse Hogan is kicking the lights out. I think he's got 56-19, where Charlie's kicked 56-41 or something. He's still number one. He's still number one for total scoreboard impact in regards to goals and goal assists. I thought, gee, it's harsh, the commentary around Charlie Curnow, that he doesn't get the contest. When I watch Carlton every week and I think, gee, they kicked to Charlie a lot, and Charlie looms in every game. Now, he hasn't had those games, but every time he's on the field, you think, you've got to be careful, because Charlie could just do something at any moment. And he gets the ball kicked to him a hell of a lot. if not sometimes, I think too much. So I agree with you. The conversation around he doesn't get to contests, I thought, gee, that's strange because he gets the ball kicked to him more than any other player in the forward half of the ground. So, interesting that we were thinking similar paths. And you're right, it is going to be the finals. And even still, there's a part of me, when I looked at that final series last year, was it a bit harsh, the whole thing around Charlie Curnow? Because I remember I was at the Gabba, the game where he had no impact, but the ball lived in Carlton's defensive half for like half the game. Brisbane just kept it in there and in their forward half, and he wasn't really able to get to work, and he was quiet in the Melbourne game. I agree with that. But yeah, it's a big fascinating talking point. It looks like he's slightly sore as well, but gee, you're right. One game where he didn't kick a goal, and the heat has turned right up on Charlie Curnow.
He's kicked multiple goals in every game bar two this year, Joey. So, I mean, you're right. He hasn't probably had the highs, but in terms of consistency, you know, if you can bank on 2 or 3 out of him every week, which he's done every week, well, then you take that, particularly for a guy that, you know, does roam the forward line. He's not a bear in the square type forward. So, yeah, look, I feel for him. I feel for him because he'd be feeling it.
Yeah, well, we'll turn this the other way. My thought of the week is probably going in a different slant, and it's off the back of the Brisbane Lions now winning 9 straight, and for me now clearly the team to beat, and there is a bit of sense of Geelong of 2022 about them that won their last 16 games and steamrolled everyone in the final series. That Brisbane, who, to be ironically, were my pre-season tip, and a lot of people's, they were sort of the premiership favourites over the pre-season for how close they got grand final, that now we're here at round 20 with everything that's happened this year, and Brisbane are the favourites. But in particular, I just wonder where we sit with Lachie Neale in the conversation. Drew is one of the all-time greats. Like, I saw a comment, I think it was even from our former coach Grant Thomas, that scoffed at a suggestion that Lachie Neale should be put in the same bracket as Greg Williams. And I thought, why not? Like, Lachie Neale is on track this year for his 4th All-Australian, his 6th best and fairest. He's already won 2 Brownlow medals, and I just had a look, Rui. He's got 9 best on grounds this year, come Brownlow night, including 7 of the last 11 games. So he's on 27 Brownlow votes. So he's going to be awfully close Brownlow night to winning a 3rd. If Paddy Cripps hadn't have got off at appeals a couple of years ago, he could be going for 4 Brownlows. I just wonder whether this is the year for Lachie Neale to cap off his CV with a premiership. He'll be thereabouts in Norm Smith betting if they do win a premiership. But I just wonder whether he's just snuck under the radar, because sometimes it creeps up on us while players are still playing on how good they actually are until they retire, and then we're like, oh yeah, that actually was one hell of a career. And I just think Lachie Neale is starting to head into that territory, and it might just creep up on a few people.
All right, forget all-time greats. Where do you rank him in Brisbane's midfielders this century?
Wow, yeah, that's a great point. You'd have to put him second.
He's behind Voss. You got him in front of Black.
Well,
probably. You got him in front of Simon Black.
Okay, this is where it's different, because the 3 premierships separate those guys. That's what separates them. There's no doubt about that.
What if they win it? If they win it this year, does he jump ahead?
Oh, does he jump ahead of Black with 1? It's a great chat, isn't it? It's a great conversation. Black's won the Brownlow, won a Norm Smith, won all the best and fairest. He's probably not ahead of Black either, is he? Still, but
I don't know. It's your thought of the week, mate. It's your thought of the week.
I know.
I handed it to you.
Yeah, I know. But I just think that if he can cap off his career with a premiership, I think he richly deserves to sit amongst that sort of next tier. I've got Ablett and Franklin as 1 and 2 in the modern era since sort of 2000. But it's interesting where he sits. Hey,
well, every year, the last few years, we've been saying this is their best chance, Brisbane. Yeah. We said it last year. I think we said it the year before that. We said it the year before that when when they had all of those home final opportunities. Last year, they were there, weren't they?
Yeah.
Is this their best look at it? You'd have to say, with the way some of the other top teams are falling away, that again, this looks like their best chance.
This is now their next best chance. Yeah, it is. I think so. They're going to finish top 2. They're going to get home prelims. The rest of the competition, some are coming strong. I mean, Western Bulldogs won 6 of their last 7, but where do they finish in the ladder is going to be interesting. Giants have won 5 straight, but how convincing? Geelong, Port Adelaide, a few other teams you can, Fremantle, you can sort of ask, and Carlton, you can ask about, their level of getting there. But I think this is Brisbane's best chance, and I certainly think for me they are the deserved premiership favourites, and this might be the last look they really get at it. We've probably said that the last couple. But this is it. This is their chance, and I think they're ready, and they've done it differently. On the flip side, we have to talk about the Sydney Swans and what has happened to them. We put it on the radar. We were chatting about them last week. They started the year 13-1. Since then, they've won one of their last 6. Maybe those close losses just wallpapered some cracks. We delved deep in the numbers, and they were starting to just have some alarm bells, and now they've been found out. The big question I want to ask you, after getting beaten by 112 points, 3 weeks out from the end of the home and away season, can they still actually win the premiership? Because to do it, they'll have to do something that no team in the history of AFL has done and win a flag after getting beaten by more than 110 points in a game in a season.
Well, I mean, it'll take a coaching masterstroke, because I think at this point of the season, how they're playing in terms of game style and whether teams have found them out. I mean, game styles are relevant when you're getting beaten like they've been beaten, particularly the last couple of weeks. I mean, you could still mount a case that they were in the other games. I mean, their losses were 4 losses by a combined 10 points or whatever it was. So they were still in games of footy. But the way the games have been played the last couple of weeks, throw the game plan, throw the handbook out. It's about effort. It's about your sense of urgency and desperation within game, and usually it comes back to your want and your will to defend. I mean, I heard David King's comment around players playing for Brownlows and playing for all Australians. I mean, that's about as severe a criticism as you could cop as a player, that you're playing with that level of selfishness. And I mean, I haven't seen the Swans live, so what does it look like, Joey, to you, to receive that level of criticism that players are playing for individual awards? I haven't heard that level of criticism directed at too many players before.
Yeah, I think it's just they're just not playing at the same level and intensity that they were in the first half of the year. Like Chad Warner's had a couple of games now where he's just gone through the motions. Isaac Heaney has dropped away severely with his impact, and the level that he was playing at, to be fair, was off the charts, but it's dropped away significantly. Errol Gould's still sort of running around doing his thing, and now all of a sudden it changes from being the biggest ball magnet in the league to some questions about is he kick chasing. It's amazing how the narrative changes when you lose. But I think when you dive a bit deeper and you look further back into Sydney's year now, there were a lot of games where they started slow and then they had the ability to flick a switch and kick like 7 goals in 15 minutes and blow a team out the water. But but when you looked at their full body of work, have they been a team that have been ruthless from start to finish and put the foot down and just been so much better than teams? Maybe they haven't. So maybe it has relied a bit on talent.
But a month ago we were talking about this could be the most obvious premiership of all time. Yep. The way we reflected on Geelong's from 2022 when they were clear, they were number one offense, number one defense. That was Sydney up until not that long ago. So something within the fabric of that group has significantly shifted.
It's your point. It has to be psychological.
So that's the challenge.
It's mental for the players.
So that's the challenge, for John Longmire. Yep. Papley and some injuries to Rampy and some really important players. And those guys are fabric guys. But it's too big a drop-off to be anything other than some mental barrier that this team is going to have, I think, a really hard time overcoming this close to the business end of the season.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's going to be hard. You still have to say that they are a big chance because they're going to finish top 2, most likely. They're still going to be playing in home finals. If they're in a home prelim at the SCG, 7 weeks from now, Rui's a long time. We've already seen that across the whole year. In 7 weeks, it could look completely different. They could get themselves right and win a prelim final at home, and then they're back in the grand final.
What you hope if you're a Swans fan is that they were that far clear on top of the ladder that top 2 was almost guaranteed, that they almost got into a bit of a malaise of what is there really to play for. We've got our starting position on the grid. Let's get to the finals because that for now is really all that matters for us. But we do know once you lose that edge, once you lose that fabric and spirit of the group and that belief and that trust, it's hard to flick the switch. It really is hard unless you've practiced to playing to the 100th minute week after week after week. It becomes really difficult to just flick that switch and turn it on. So We'll see.
Yeah.
Hope for the Swans' sake that they're capable of it, but it's going to take a mighty effort to turn it around.
Maybe these two losses, the jarring losses, the way they've lost the last 2 weeks, might have been the best thing they needed, Rook. Because if they had just kept losing games and losing close ones, they might have just kept thinking, we'll be right. Now,
Maybe.
they got smacked in the face and it's back to getting back to work. Speaking of getting smacked in the face and getting back to work, I want to talk about Port Adelaide because that happened to them mid-season. They lost 3 games in a row where they got pumped, and the big one against Brisbane at home when all the fans turned on Ken Hinkley, and it looked like, God, what's happened to Port Adelaide? Well, since that moment, really, speak about profiles, about defence and attack, Port Adelaide's last 6 weeks is now one of the best profiles in the competition. They're defending much better. Their clearance and their midfielders are defending better. They've won 5 of their last 6. The question now has always been around, can you trust Port Adelaide? But what if you take perceptions out of it and say, well, that's just only a perception of previous years and previous final series, and you look at the facts of the last 6 weeks? Is there an element of why not Port Adelaide? Why not, from what we've seen from just their body of work for 6 weeks, that this is real and they can sustain this in a final series? Or is it right that we've all got this sort of this human nature instinct of like, well, we've seen them in finals not get it done, and that's still going to be the big question mark?
Yeah, but I think when you say we've seen them in finals not get it done, it hasn't looked like a lack of trust to me. Like the way Port Adelaide have played in finals, I would say, yeah, you can trust them because they're there every year. The one time where they've really turned it up was the prelim against the Western Bulldogs, where you just thought, how on earth have they been beaten this badly at home against the Dogs? Who we know ended up getting done by the D's the following week. But that's the one time I think where you could have really questioned the group and your amount of faith in that group and Ken Hinkley. But outside of that, yeah, I trust this Port Adelaide group. They fluctuate a little bit more within seasons, I think, than other teams. Certainly the people that booed Kenny Hinkley 8 weeks ago would have a little bit of egg on their face. But no, they're going to be right in it. I trust that group. I think they've got enough players that play the right way. They play a good brand. They defend in the front half really well. They lock the ball in. It's a style that stands up. The Richmond prelim, where that was one of the all-time great prelims, where Port Adelaide looked like they'd done everything right. And that Richmond team, we know, they were a juggernaut. But it took everything they had to get over the top of the power in Adelaide.
Yeah, if we're talking about which teams at this final series have got a high ceiling, you only have to look at the last month. Port Adelaide have embarrassed the Western Bulldogs. They've embarrassed the Sydney Swans, and they've knocked off Carlton away from home. Like, it is pretty strong. And if that is their best football and they can play near that in the finals, it can beat anybody. They've already proven it. Yep. So maybe Port Adelaide in this crazy season could be the crazy storyline to come out of it if it's not the Brisbane Lions and if Sydney continue to falter. Hey, just quickly, one other talking point. I want to mention the GWS Giants and the great coaching effort of Adam Kingsley. We know that we rate him very highly. We had him as an assistant at St Kilda. What he was able to do in that fourth quarter to change the game when they were 28 points down, the Giants, they looked gone, and he made some moves. He put his superstar Toby Green in the centre bounce and then did the old Toby, get around the footy and then spit forward. Brent Daniels came up and played as an extra around the ball, changed the whole look of the game. Jesse Hogan, who's been in sensational form, kicked 5. For them to come and win, that is massive for their season from where they could have sat. They could have been, just outside the 8 or just hanging in the 8. Now they're setting themselves for a top 4 spot. It was pretty impressive. And another one that if they get their best footy going, if they get that tsunami going, their style of footy, it can also beat anybody. Like, that's what makes this year so amazing.
Well, it only took a quarter of their best footy, didn't it, to run over the top of the Hawks, who have been taking on all comers and putting them to the sword. So, yeah, they're a scary proposition. I don't think they're the sort of side I don't think anyone wants to play in September. You don't want to run into a hot Giants team. They almost got over the top of the Pies last year, and yeah, well done, Adam Kingsley. It was a card from the deck in his time at Richmond, wasn't it? With Lambert. Coming from half forward up onto the ball, spitting Martin forward with Daniels and Toby. So, yeah, look, great scenes as well in the rooms after the game. Yeah,
I saw that.
With getting the family in. Yeah, it was really, really good to see. So, good work, Turtle. We know he's a great coach. But, yep, again, right form, right time of the year for the Giants. They sit, I think, with the Western Bulldogs, Geelong, Brisbane, Port Adelaide as those teams that you'd rather be them a little bit further back in the sort of pecking order on the ladder but entering some really good form than you would be sort of Sydney that are, clawing onto those rungs on the ladder trying to hang on to their spot.
Yeah, well, that's the fascination. Besides Sydney and Carlton, all these other teams in the 8 are in form. They're all starting to find their best footy. So that's what's happening this year and why it is still wide open, considering we had Sydney and Carlton as the clear 1 and 2 only about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Hey, we'll take a break because I want to get into real talk, shit talk. But if you do have a question for us, make sure you get on Instagram, hit us up at footytalk_pod, or on TikTok at footytalkpod. We'll be back right after this with a bit of real talk, shit talk. You are listening to Footy Talk. If you do have a question for us, hit us up on Instagram, or if you're listening on Spotify, hit the bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. I'm here with Nick Riewoldt. We're going to play a bit of real talk, shit talk, some of the talking points in the last 24 to 48 hours, and give our takes. I'm going to start with you, Rui, seeing you are the man over there in the States. The NFL do wildcard weekend, the best of any sport in the world. Wildcard weekend in the AFL. It sounds like it's inevitable, and it might even be coming in as soon as next year. Will be one of the best things to happen to the AFL final series in a long, long time.
It'll be one of the best things to happen to the AFL bottom line in a long time. I think it's a commercial decision because we're not expanding the final series because we're in a situation where we think the 9th and the 10th team can win a premiership. I mean, that's not why we're doing it. We've had one team, the Western Bulldogs, win it from 7th in the last 25 years. So, we're not opening the final series up for opportunities for teams, but it's an extra couple of finals that will get played in that first weekend of the wild card weekend. It's 2 extra fan bases that remain engaged for another weekend of footy and an opportunity for them to see finals, bigger attendance, more commercial opportunities for the AFL. So, yeah, look, I don't hate it from that point of view because I think if you're a fan of the 9th and 10th team, well then, great. Why not be engaged for an extra week? But let's just be realistic about why we're doing it. I don't think we're going to see teams from 9th and 10th win it because we don't see teams from 7th and 8th win it.
Yeah, that's
Thoughts?
right. No, it's only happened. I agree. It's only happened once in 25 years. A team from outside the top 6 has won it anyway, so you might as well liven up that part of the fixture, make it more exciting.
Keep the fans engaged.
And then I agree because there'll be the cynics will say, oh, we're accepting mediocrity, 10th now playing finals and all those things. I'm looking at it the other way going, no, it's not. It now means you need to finish top 6 because top 6 you are in the finals. You are locked and guaranteed. So all of a sudden top 2 becomes really enticing to stay in the home finals the whole way through. Top 4 for the double chance. And top 6 then you want to get to because you're in. So that would even make the ladder, say, for this year even more enthralling because you want to be locked and loaded, before the wildcard weekend. You don't want to be finishing 7th and having all of a sudden an elimination game, but it does keep it alive. I think it would be great. I think it would be really enjoyable for the competition, a way to expand, as you said, grow it from a commercial sense, but also just grow the excitement leading into the finals. And then if the team from 7, whoever wins out of those 4 teams is good enough, or good luck, but history shows they're unlikely to win anyway. The premiership's going to come from the top 6, more likely the top 4. So good one, Rui. I think it'll be terrific. You got one for me?
Okay, one for you, Joey. I don't think you're on the All-Australian committee yet, but you should be because you're one of the best, most astute voices in the game. Tristan Xerri from North Melbourne, he is a lock now for an All-Australian berth.
A lock is a bit strong, but I think right now he's the favourite. I think that the body of work... So he's in front, yeah. I think that he's gone past Max Gawn now, who was holding on to it for a long time. I know there was talk about Brodie Grundy, but his form has been only okay since the halfway mark of the year, and I don't have him right up there. Oscar McInerney, he's making a run. Rowan Marshall's always around for discussion. This is a wide open race for the number 1 ruck spot, but I'm going to give it to Tristan Xerri. Mate, he's the number 2 rated ruck in the competition. He's been sensational all year. And because they've been off Broadway, I don't think people have seen him as often, but I think he deserves absolutely to be in the squad, and I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the team. Hey, one back for you. Essendon knocked off Fremantle at the MCG. Massive game for them, kept their season alive. Finally, the Essendon edge is back. Real talk, shit talk.
The edge is back?
Yeah.
No, that's shit talk. That's shit talk, Joey. It's only back when it's sustained. So at the moment, you can't do it for a week and say that the Essendon edge is back. I mean, the Unsociable Hawks, that was built over 4 or 5 years of consistent performance and a consistent style and a consistent way of doing things. So we might look back on this event this game and say that is the day that the penny dropped and that was the start of the Essendon edge. But no, to say that it's back, it's only back if it's consistently applied from here on in. So reserve judgment on that one, Joey. It was great to see for the Bombers. The challenge now is for that not to be an event, but to become the norm for them. And then we can say that the Essendon edge is a real thing. Last one for you, Joey. A lot of names, as is always the case, being bandied about for the West Coast coaching vacancy. Are the amount of guys that are ruling themselves out, Josh Carr, Jamie Graham, to name a few, is that a reflection of
Bucks.
how attractive that job actually is? Bucks as well. Is that a reflection of how attractive that job is?
Yeah, I think that's real talk. Not in regards to, coaching one of the big clubs in the AFL. The West Coast Eagles would be a great club to coach. I just don't know if this coaching job, this vacancy right now, is the one you want to take. I think there's a cautionary tale going on at Richmond with Adam Uze. They're going to have a lot of heavy lifting to do, the West Coast Eagles. And I've said before, unless you get real guarantee from the West Coast Eagles board that they're going to give you a long, long time to see this one through, like a 5-year contract straight up and say, we're going to stick with you because it's going to take that long. Otherwise, it'd be pretty nervy because in 2-3 years' time, they could still be in a very similar situation. Once Elliot Yeo and Jeremy McGovern and Tim Kelly and these guys move on that have still been sort of carrying the load for this West Coast Eagles team that lack talent. Yeah, I'd be just, if I was a highly rated assistant, I'd be a little bit more selective and maybe I'd just be sitting on my hands and waiting for some other opportunities because you could see within the next 2 to 3 years, really, maybe time, Geelong and Chris Scott have maybe had time where they could, move on. Brisbane and Chris Fagan, Bevo and the Bulldogs have been around for a long time. Ken Hinkley and Port Adelaide. Like there are, I reckon, a lot of jobs that, and more enticing jobs that might become available in the next few years if an assistant is prepared to sit tight. So maybe that is what is going on. Even John Longmire at Sydney with Dean Cox. So, good call, Rui. I like it, and I've liked seeing you again. Another great edition of Footy Talk. Tomorrow, make sure you join in because Abby Holmes will be with Jack Heverin. And until then, nice to see you, Rue, and enjoy your Tuesday. Thanks for watching Footy Talk with myself and Rui. New podcast episodes dropping every Tuesday, so make sure you tune in.